Go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the final panel of day one of the Student Games Festival. We have got a stacked panel today, yo. But who are they? Let's go down the line and have them introduce themselves, starting with Max Clark.
Oh, hello.
Who are you? Why are you here? What have you done?
Okay, yes. I'm here because I'm an independent game developer with really great advice, maybe. I quit my job 2 years ago to work on my hobby game, turn it into a real game called Flock of Dogs. It's a cooperative game of writing flying dogs. And it will be my first commercial release, so I don't have much of a bio. Next.
Okay, thanks, Max. Moving on, we're just going to keep going down the line. Jeff, you're up.
Hi, I'm Jeff Mumm. I'm making a game called Guinea Pig Parkour. It's my first indie game. I came from kind of the world of comics and then animation. And so I'm sort of an animator turned indie dev.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Jason, you're up.
Let me unmute myself. Hi, I'm Jason Fader. I've been in the game industry for the last 20 years now. Started out at Blizzard as a tools programmer on, Diablo 2, Warcraft 3, World of Warcraft. Then launched my first indie title. We'll talk about that one later. Then went to Obsidian and joined the Fallout New Vegas team as a lead producer. Worked on a few more things after that. Then went indie again, did a Kickstarter, dipped my toe back into being a CEO, game director, did a bunch of freelance consulting stuff. I was a game director on a reboot for an old game called System Shock. And then recently, I have resurrected my old Steam Bandits team thanks to an awesome publisher that we've aligned with, and getting the band back together and finishing a pretty cool game.
Super cool. Okay. Mike, you're up.
Wow. It's hard to follow that one. That was a really well done intro, Jason.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm going to try to strike a balance between Max and Jason's duration. I'm Mike Schweitzer. I started my career. Well, actually, I graduated UCI and went straight into working on a game called StarCraft Ghost a long time ago, back when a small studio, Swing and Ape, was still known as that, which then got later bought.
I played one of your early builds. It was really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I agree. It was really good. I'm sad. And Blizzard bought them out. Blizzard eventually kind of put that project on a definite hold. I made a brief detour into the web team over there, and then went on to the World of Warcraft team, and then spent a couple of years there, and then mostly was on the Hearthstone team, and that was for about 7 years before going into an incubation project over there. And that was for a couple of years. And now I'm on Second Dinner, and what we've announced is we're working on a mobile Marvel game. Although I'm maybe questionably indie here because we're well funded and we have a bunch of people. So Kyle says I'm indie enough to be on this panel. So here I am. And since I don't think I said it, I'm an engineer.
Mike.
Sorry.
You're welcome. You're welcome on the panel. Next up, Patrick. Why are you here?
Hi.
What have you done?
I'm Patrick Traynor. I'm mainly a hobbyist. I'm working on my first commercial game. It's a puzzle game called Patrick's Parabox, which recently won the IGF Excellence in Design Award at this year's IGF, which I'm super happy about. I'm mainly a hobbyist. This is my first commercial game. It's my first rodeo. I'm also working on a hobby project called I Want a Maker. Also, I got a computer science degree from UCSD.
Very cool. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. So indie development takes a lot of curiosity. Not a lot of people knows a lot about what it is, and it's sometimes even a very solo endeavor. But there's different kinds of indies. Like Mike, you're on a bigger indie team, but you're still independent, and most of us, the rest of us, are on smaller teams. Michael Benavides asks, one member from RISE, asks, how much experience each of you had before in going indie, and what were the deciding factors that outweighed the risks? Max, you may start.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I suppose I did take a few courses in college about learning how to program. I actually also went to UCI. I forgot to mention that, but I studied physics, and I decided I didn't want to be a physicist, and so I got a job doing insurance appraisals, which is not a dream job, but it was flexible. It let me live on my own. It paid okay, and it was just super cool to like be independent, live in an apartment with my buddies, and goof off. But in my spare time, other than playing StarCraft 2 all day, I eventually downloaded Unity and just went through tutorial, and then after tutorial and failed project after failed project after failed project after failed project. And then really the tipping point came for me after doing I took a week off of work and did like a 7-day roguelike game jam where I just, programmed for like 60, 80 hours that week. And it was just like I was kind of shocked at like how much I actually did. In that it wasn't a great game, it wasn't a finished game. It was another failed project. But I had like some confidence in that. And then the next project I started after that is Flock of Dogs, which I stuck with for about 2 years working part-time. And then I don't know, this is it. I mean, the decision to go full-time indie is super personal and a big deal, and it's a financial decision, it's a lifestyle decision. Maybe when you're fresh out of college, it feels a little bit easier to do. I don't know. I opted for the safe route and just getting a job. And
Do you guys agree with that? Like, do you think it would have felt easier going indie like right out of college as opposed to like later? Or they're like strategic?
The younger you do it, the better,
Younger you
especially
do
if you have a safety net.
Really?
Yeah, I was gonna say if you have like a project that's kind of like already starting to like you've started it already, it's catching steam, you're really motivated to like continue it, and then you're able to like put it on a store. Like I think the Slay the Spire people were sort of in that zip code of that sort of situation. So
Mhm.
I think it kind of depends on like that factor is what I would say.
Yeah, Mike, actually, that was exactly my situation. So
Okay.
I've been working on Parabox for about a year, and then I graduated. And I was like, well, this game, I'm really motivated, getting a lot of positive feedback. I think it can go places. And then, so also the decision came from my family's willing to support me while I work on this.
Oh, awesome.
Otherwise, I had so many fears about going indie, a lot of which were real fears and they actually happened, like all the stress and all this stuff. But at least I don't have to worry about the financials, which is a big deal for me personally. Otherwise, if I hadn't had the project and the financial stability with my family supporting me, I would definitely not have be doing this right now.
Sorry, someone's asking what I meant by safety net. Basically, financial or family. When anybody goes indie, it's risky, and you can mitigate that risk by having some padding because the odds are you're probably going to fail. You may not, but those are the exceptions more than the rule. And so you need to make sure that you're going to be okay if this thing does fail. The last thing you want to do is just to bet your life savings and everything on it, and you have a family and kids and a house mortgage. And if that game doesn't pan out, it's not just your life you've ruined, it's everybody else's that's orbiting you. And that's tragic.
Yeah. What have you guys done to try to create some sort of safety net and realize so that when you do fail or even like when you are developing that things will not spiral out of control should things not go in the direction you wanted? Jeff.
I don't know if this is the right question for me.
Okay, go for it.
I guess I'll give my backstory a little bit because I'm probably different than most people. I've sort of wanted to be an independent artist since the time I was like a little kid. Like I had my website in 1998 on GeoCities, and I was like trying to make a webcomic, and I kind of have been attempting the build an audience, get a
Oh, Jeff?
Ruh-roh.
Rough. Okay. Safety net question. What have you guys put in place so that when things go wrong, you don't die? Mike.
Well, we got a lot of money. there was some like prior business relationship that was oh, is Jeff back?
Joe.
That was weird.
Yeah,
I could hear you, but I guess you couldn't hear me.
yeah, you froze up.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, finish your thought, then we'll go over to Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anybody else?
Yeah, so it's really been a for me it's just been a long journey of like adapting. And so I started with comics and then I went into animated shorts on YouTube.
Oh, geez.
In
You're breaking up
game.
again. Hey,
Sorry
Jeff?
about that. You sorry,
Oh,
try
boy.
to
How about can you try to
I'll
figure out
just
something figure it out on your side and we'll switch to somebody else? Cool.
sounds good. Okay.
Sounds good. Mike,
All right.
you're up again.
Okay. I hope we don't end the call. when
No
Jeff-
worries.
Okay. Yeah, so there was some like prior business relationship, which definitely helped when our two original founding duo, Hamilton Chu and Ben Brode, started the company.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like, I don't know, as like an individual, I forget if the question was like directed out like just like the group that we're in versus the individual. I know like for some of these folks it's the same thing, but like as an individual, a lot of it was about just like having like a really good idea of kind of like the things that are like important to you. It's kind of like the risks that you're willing to take, and then like the risks that you're not, and like having a good idea about that. And like it kind of going back to the earlier question, that would have been probably impossible for me to figure out like coming out of college. But being I think about almost 14 years into being at the one company like Blizzard, until I finally jumped over to being indie. I had a pretty good idea of it. Sorry, go ahead.
Finish. Okay, sure. It seems like there's this balance of like when you're younger, it's like you have the safety net more. You're more likely to have a safety net. There's more time you're free to fail. There's not other people that are responsible for you. But when you're older, you generally have way more experience. You kind of know what you like, and you have built up some credibility. What do you guys think of that balance in picking like those strategic moments to do that? I know, Jason, you said the earlier the better. Or do you still like believe that 100%?
So you shouldn't go into it blind. You should have some kind of game development experience. Even in school, working on hobby projects, working with a team, it just depends on what your goals are and what the scope is of the project. If you're a solo team and you already know how to make a game and you've made some games before, that's low risk. If you're fresh out of college and you want to start a team of 20 people and you've never run a team before, that's pretty risky. So anybody that wants to go into, you just understand your strengths, understand your weaknesses, and try to make something that you can finish within scope and within budget. Because if you don't do that, then there's going to be unforeseen consequences that might have long-lasting repercussions in your life, like going deep into debt. Also, never ever fund a team from your credit cards. Trust me.
Okay, I trust you.
And just to like finish that's a really good point. And just to finish that thought, I think it's kind of related to what Jason was saying is basically like, hey, look, this is what I think is going to happen if I like, let's say I do start to fund for my credit card, this is what will happen. I'm okay with that if it goes that way. Like that's not going to be a life crushing, soul crushing thing. Like it might suck like a lot, but if you go into it and like you're not expecting that and like it happens anyway, then like that's going to affect like everybody around you, right? Like that's it's going to be really, really bad news. So like one of the things for me, like even though we are well funded, it's still a risk, right, compared to like the previous job for myself. And one of the things that was really important to me is like, look, I really am passionate about doing this specific area of technology that I really want to do. I just wasn't getting that. Like I wasn't getting that at my last job, and like that was making me want to leave anyway. So that would have been like an even bigger risk to myself and the project I was on. So just like having a really good like picture of like, okay, here are the sets of risks or types of risks that I'm like okay with making. Like if
Okay, cool. Anybody else have anything to add on that? If not, we can move on to the next question.
I'd add on that spending 7 years as an insurance appraiser has made me really appreciate that every day I get to wake up and work on my own creation and like do what I've wanted to do. I mean, it 7 years is a long time to spend doing a job you didn't care about, but at least now I have some perspective.
So it's almost like you appreciate what you're actually doing way more, and that motivates you.
Probably.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next question. So, often is the struggle publisher, self-publish. 10 years ago, you needed a publisher, and not always on the best terms. Today, Kickstarter exists. Kickstarter's funded a lot of awesome games. Undertale, FTL, Pillars of Eternity, the list goes on and on. But it's not for every game. Have you ever considered using Kickstarter for your project? Why or why not? If you are used, and what led you to that decision? Let's start with Jason. I know you used Kickstarter for Steam Bandits Outlaw. Why did you do that?
Outpost, yes.
Outpost.
We were fortunate enough. We did our Kickstarter back in 2012, back when it was kind of the Wild West of Kickstarter, and you didn't really need to have a whole lot to show. And that was actually a really bad thing. It would have been good if before the campaign we needed to have a demo in place. And actually, 4 years after that, I was on another Kickstarter campaign for a reboot of System Shock. So I've been through 2 Kickstarters. Both have not shipped yet. And the Steam Bandits one, that's the one that I'm working on now. And so what I would say, I mean, the pros and cons of Kickstarter, it's great interacting with your community. If you like interacting with the community, I personally do. I like that direct connection with the fans. When you work with a publisher, the publisher is basically a wall in between you and the fans, and they need to filter and dilute a lot of the communication that can occur, and having a one-to-one conversation with your community becomes more difficult. And it was important to me, starting this studio again, to have as much transparency as possible and to just kind of run things how I like running my life. I like being as genuine as I can. I mean, it's exhausting if you need to be deceitful, and I'm too lazy to do that. And so sometimes I'll be more honest than I should, and I put my foot in my mouth. But I mean, I guess my biggest advice is just be true to yourself. Everybody's different, and everybody has their own different style. But as long as you can sleep at the end of the night and not burn bridges and not take advantage of others and just infringe upon other people's rights and respect everybody you work with, I think you can do no wrong. Even if your game fails, as long as you did something that you're proud of, you succeeded for yourself.
Amen, brother. Totally agree, 100%. Anybody else have anything on that? Mike?
What was the question again? The self-publishing versus publishing thing?
Versus publishing,
Okay.
Kickstarter, why or why not? That's
Right.
the Too Long Didn't Read version. I think,
Okay, we got kind of fortunate in that because we're well funded, we didn't have to do the crowdsourcing thing. But the publishing versus self-publishing thing, I guess the angle that we're coming at it from, and this is like active discussion between like our business head and our CEO and all that. So they're in the midst of this kind of decision making, and we might do like a blend. I think a lot of it comes down to it's kind of like what I like to call, or I guess it's like sort of a term like a total cost of ownership, or TCO for short. But basically, it's like how much are you willing to absorb of that stuff that you want to do yourself? Like how much can you absorb? How much can you offload? Right. So like a lot of it is that, and because of the funding, it's like we get kind of this luxury of being able to hyper focus. So like it's the things that we really want to do. Like maybe there are things that publishers can provide that can be offloaded from us, but like some of us, like Ben Brode is a really bombastic guy, and like he really wants to do a lot of the community stuff. Like he doesn't want to give that up. So like there's parts of that where we can keep, and then there's parts where it's like, hey, maybe a publisher could really help. So we might actually do a blend. Like it kind of depends on regions too, right? Like in certain regions we might self, in other regions we'll go with partners. But and I think that's like a decision like a bunch of folks will have to make too. It's like,
Mhm.
do you hand off ports? Do you hand off to different regions like publishing duties? Um, so um, a lot of like the kind of the what it boils down to for us is like a lot of the focus stuff. That's like one of my big charges at this company is to like really maintain like focus, right? If I that one of us is like starting to get distracted with shit, I'll start to like peg them. I'll start to be like, why are you doing that? Because you're not focusing. Um, I get into trouble for that
Totally.
sometimes, but a lot of like the publishing thing, I think, boils down to that. And like, what do we want to do? What do we want to focus on?
Mhm. That makes sense for sure. Max, I saw you were trying to say something earlier,
Um,
or you unmuted and
I mean, I'm in a weird position because I inherited some money, but it wasn't like enough to just live on my own forever and ever in a luxurious lifestyle. It was enough to feel comfortable to quit my job and move in with my dad and work from home. And it was just like clear that I really, really wanted to do that. And sometimes I think that maybe uh, if I hadn't received that money, which was just sort of out of nowhere, I would have stayed part-time and perhaps would have like not overscoped my game as I have been accused of, and maybe I would have already released Flock of Dogs 1, and it would have become a viral sensation, and I would now be quitting my job and be working on Flock of Dogs 2 with collaborators, with maybe some actual external funding, so I could pay people to do, really good art and stuff.
Mhm.
But I'm not gonna say I'm not happy doing the version I'm doing.
Mhm.
And yeah, like it's just my situation is very lucky.
Cool. Patrick, do you have anything on that? If not, we can just move on to the next question.
Yeah,
Very,
let's
very
move on.
cool. Okay. This question comes from B.JS in the Twitch chat. Being able to work on your own game for yourself sounds awesome, but it also creates a lot of pressure on yourself. How do you deal with the pressure of the games you are working on being a success, both for money and for sense of self-value? Thank you, B-Dots. We'll start with Patrick.
So, like I said earlier, I definitely wouldn't be doing this if I had to deal with the pressure of money. That'd be a huge thing weighing down on me, I imagine. I do deal with a lot with the stresses about my own expectations and how they rise sometimes, and what other people think, what I think other people expect of me. Like if the game gets attention, now I'm putting more pressure on myself. I don't really have. I guess over time, I've just gotten better at dealing with those, like just analyzing how I'm thinking about those. If I'm having an emotional reaction, to try to calm that down, and just I don't know. I don't know what advice to give about that, but it's gotten better for me. So if you're going through that, um, for me, I don't know.
Mm, got
Um,
it.
I'm like burning to answer this one, even though I'm probably not the best person to. I think Max and Patrick are probably like, since they're solo adventures.
For sure.
But for me, this is kind of like converging on some, I guess, like advice that I've also been giving to when I was managing people, giving to my reports. It's kind of like there's like this Venn diagram, right? Of like, okay, there's stuff that I really want to do, there's goals that I have, and then there's like what can I like bring value to? Like what do my skill sets bring value to? Like what can I get paid for? Like all that kind of stuff. Um, like I started a bunch of side project stuff when I was at Blizzard. Like I like wrote my own game engine and released an app on the App Store just because I didn't feel like I was fulfilling like certain like I wasn't scratching certain itches over there. Um, so I feel like a lot of this is like, can you make these like can you make this Venn diagram like really like have a lot of overlap, right? Like you can get paid to do the thing that you're also really passionate about. because I think like a common thing, especially that happens at big companies, a lot of people just like start to kind of do their own side projects or like go off and like split off from that company and do a smaller thing, and then probably they'll like stop doing the side project stuff. So I think I think it's important to think about like what is that overlap of like, okay, here are the things that I really like, here are the things that I could get paid for because I'm highly skilled with that stuff. And then like what am I actually leaving on the table? Like what's outside that overlap? And am I okay with that? Am I okay like living with that like long term? And like I think the problem is when people don't think of it like that, they start to just like get into this like pattern, and then they start to like hopefully it works out for them. But I think I've seen a lot of people like just kind of get like frustrated with like their lack of progress in their life or like not being able to do the thing that they want to do. So like eventually it'll kind of converge on like your intrinsic motivations will kind of like force you to like do this, to have this like overlapping Venn diagram of like can I live can I do this thing sustainably and then like also do the thing that I enjoy.
Gotcha. And that's what lets you to indie development. It's
Yeah,
like a
that's
different-
exactly it. I was starting to like get to that point where I was like, okay, I have a good idea of the things that are really important to me. I have a good idea what I'm leaving on the table here. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like something that you guys have already brought up a lot of that when you guys have been talking. Anybody else have anything to add on that question?
Yeah. So I'm in a bit of a unique situation in that I run a decently sized team, and I'm in charge of all the creative and game direction stuff. I'm the most dangerous person on the team, without a doubt. Luckily, I know that. However, I also have confidence issues, and so I always second guess myself and try to bounce ideas off of my team to make sure that I'm not thinking too crazy. Because of that, it's taken a while to learn my own strengths and weaknesses and just what I think of and how I manage people in a positive way and what can resonate. And when it comes to the community, it's terrifying to me when you put something out there that you've created. There's a moment when you push out a new build for the first time that has this new great feature or new story content, and you're just refreshing that Reddit page or the Steam discussion forums just to see if people like it or do they hate it, and if they hate it, can I fix it quickly? Mm-hmm. It's I mean, let me just put it this way: before I went indie, I had hair, so it's stressful. It's not for everybody. You need a stomach for it, but if you stick with it, if you don't give up on yourself, I love it. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. And I somehow I've managed to stay afloat doing this. Once this game ships, I'll probably be in a better situation. But I learned more about myself doing this for the last 8 years than the 12 years prior that I was in AAA and doing a bunch of stuff. And I like learning. I like growing. So it's awesome.
You know, Jason, this is a really interesting case because it's almost like you almost kind of went through that journey, like a little bit of what I was describing in the abstract of just like, hey, like I'm gonna do this thing that I really want to do. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to I need a little bit more sustainability. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to okay, I'm gonna do the thing that I really want to do because it's finally working out.
Yeah.
So
the grass is always greener, and the siren call of indie always beckons.
Siren call of indie. That sounds super interesting because when you are on a big team, often like even to just communicate what the design is, get everybody moving in the same direction. Talk the directors or whoever they are, they say, this is our direction. This is where we're going. You don't need to like second guess yourself of like, this is like the best direction that we're going. You can second guess your design decisions around like making that happen, but it's a different problem. And you still have people that you can work with above you to tell you that like, oh, this is the best way to go. When you're indie, you are that person. You are both those people. And that's a totally different confidence to actually make this decision right here. Is this risk is also just as high as you take on more responsibility. So that I find that super interesting. I think Patrick and Max both have experiences on that too, if you guys want to talk about that.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Let's go with Max.
What? You haven't talked yet, Max, on this. Unless you really want me to.
Either of you have. We'll go with Max, though. I'll get you later, Patrick.
What was the question, Peter?
Well, the question involved that when you're on a team, there's often people above you that making those high level decisions. You don't have to question those high level decisions, and that gives you the confidence within your own little bubble. But when you're out of that bubble, there's all these risks. And how do you deal with the self confidence of making those choices and moving forward with that without just coming to a standstill or flailing out of control?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the big reasons I probably went indie and quit my job, and first of all, took sort of a weird job anyway, was because uh, I'm not super great at being under authority, I guess. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty stubborn. Um, so I've kind of sidestepped the whole issue of having to deal with people telling me what to do.
Uh-huh.
It would be different if I don't know how well I would work in a particular team setting, even though
The question, just to clarify and make sure we're on the same page, it's not about how would you work in a team and how that self confidence there. It's when you aren't on a team, you have to make those decisions yourself. And how do you keep your self confidence high without flailing out of control or coming to a standstill and
right,
keep moving
right.
forward?
I'm saying right, and I'm saying like I've never been crazy about working in a team, at least creatively speaking.
Yep.
So like I don't have too much of an issue at all with like generating ideas. I do have problems with like I see some of the question in the Twitch chat about staying motivated through the early day or through the early exploratory part of the development and then moving on into I don't know, continuing the project because clearly from my like game design history,
Mhm.
I haven't really finished very many things. And like the conventional wisdom has always been make something small and just finish it.
Yeah.
And like I tried that and I learned, and maybe even if I had finished any of those games, they probably wouldn't have amounted to much success. And who's to even say like this current game will be successful at all? Some of those questions about how do I stay afloat? Like I just can't answer that because like I have not received a dollar for my game yet. So I
Mm.
just like I'm scared. But I'm like so passionate about this particular project, which is a big project. And sometimes I think that maybe the advice to like start small is sort of misguided because, if you're going to be an indie, you need to be super motivated. And the best motivation for me is the game. And if you stop believing in your game, uh, then that's a very bad sign, and like not a bad sign for you as a developer or something. It's a bad sign for that particular game, I think.
Mm.
But it's like I don't know. I feel sort of you know, again like it's such a personal thing overall. And like the financials is so tied up with it. Like if you need to make a game every 3 months to make some money, like that's just a different situation.
Yeah.
So
It sounds like go big or go home versus keep it small.
I mean,
Constant odds. We hear both those things.
like there's a skill building period that's like unavoidable,
Yeah.
which like maybe that's the same thing as starting projects and then giving up on them. Although like maybe there's something to be gained. Probably I should have tried to actually put something on the Steam store a few years ago and go through that process. But I don't know. Now I have a Steam page and it took a day to figure out how to do Steam stuff. And the algorithms for Steam have changed they're changing all the time. So what would I have learned 3 years ago or 4 years ago before I started this project that would be relevant to today? It's not clear.
Hmm.
It is a super uncertain market. So like it is tough to give any like concrete advice, and also like again you know I haven't like met with any particular success yet. So I don't
Hmm.
know. I just know that like for me, working on a game that I really care about has been the fundamental solution to being an indie game dev has been the game, my game,
Your game.
my game for me.
Yeah, for you, of course. No, that I totally connect with that. That's what I hear a lot of people go indie is for their game to work on what they want to work on, and that totally makes sense. On the go big or go home part, Patrick, you worked on Patrick's Parabox. Some might consider that a smaller game, but to you, it seems like it was also a bigger endeavor. You had to invest more. Like, okay, people keep saying this is a good idea here. Let me work on it for like a year or so as a solo dev. How was that for you?
I don't want to take too long because there's so much I could talk about there. It's certainly a lot longer than I anticipated. I'm also working really slowly.
Yeah.
For me, I work on games as a hobby. Like I make games all the time. Never commercial ones. This one just happens to be like, oh, it's my biggest scope one, and people want to pay for it, so it just seems natural. And then so it just worked out that way. But I get that personal satisfaction that Max is talking about just from my hobby games. So that's totally just want to talk about that. That's like certainly an option that I would encourage. There's a lot of great hobbyist communities out there. Yeah.
That makes sense. Gotcha. All right. A lot of great answers. For that question. Razassin has a question. What do you think is the biggest way to grow your audience? How do you figure out the balance between hyping a game up for release and making people wait too long and lose interest? Jason, I think you'd be an interesting person to start here since you've been working on Steam Bandits Outlaws for off and on for about 8 years now.
Oh, geez. I mean, I would say we started in 2012. Yeah. And then it went on hiatus in 2014. And we kind of worked on it as a back burner project while I was taking on consulting and freelance work to help fund the team. But after a lot of churn, we just put that thing in cold storage for a few years and then resurrected it about last year. And so, what was the question? Oh, actually, I could read it. Oh, yeah, growing an audience. Okay, sure. Yeah.
There you go.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can build a community. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got was make sure you have a good story. Not a story in the game, but a story about you, a story about the development, a story about your team, how the game was made. Because that's what people really latch onto is what is your story. And that's how you get Polygon articles, Kotaku articles. If there's something really cool about what you're doing, how you're doing it, that sets you apart from everybody else, that would make for an interesting story, that is a lot of free marketing you can get because people will want to know that story. They'll want you to tell that story. And so the more you tell that story and the more you spread that awareness, the more fans and a larger community that you can generate. Other aspects that you can try would be start a Discord server, a subreddit. Find that audience, find the people that would like to play your game, reach out to them and collaborate with them, work with them. Start out by just reaching out to them, interacting, seeing what they want. And then you can bubble up the most loyal fans as evangelists for your game, where they can then go out and spread the word to their friends and other people that would like to play that game. And that's probably the cheapest way you can do it. And then the more expensive route is you can hire a marketing or PR firm that can help spread that awareness. But I think for most indies, if you're working on an indie game, you probably already have some idea who would like the game and where those people may be. And you just need to find them and get them to understand why your game's going to be incredible, and then get them to spread the word and just start from there. You basically got to take the road on the show and just sell yourself and the game.
Gotcha. And there's a lot of different ways of doing that, whether that be getting an article written about you, events.
Yeah, there's GDC talks on this stuff. There's books on this stuff. And there's people that specialize in it, that freelance and do consulting for this kind of thing too.
I like the general high level discussion. I'd also like to hear how you guys do this practically in your actual developments as well. So for instance,
I mean, on the practical standpoint, we have a Discord server and communicate with our fan base on a regular basis whenever they have questions. I'm always the first one to respond within an hour or so, depending on if I'm awake or not. It's very important to me to be as responsive and accessible to the community. while also not distracting me from work that I'm working on. So if a question comes in and it's not a very serious question that I need to answer, I may postpone answering that for a few hours while I finish whatever I'm working on. And then other things that we've tried, I mean, we've tried forums to nurture a community, and forums maybe can still work, but I feel like forums are getting a little dated. You can always do a Facebook page and find an audience out there and get them to like the page, and then do Facebook paid ads and sponsorship stuff.
So
From my
Kickstarter-
standpoint,
go for it.
yeah, Kickstarter communication via the backer emails that you can do. But really, what I found to be the most effective is show, don't tell. Make a good video that shows off your game. Could just be a story trailer that has some concept art that's moving around. Could be a recorded footage of the game itself with you narrating on it and talking about it. I mean, to this day, I still recall that crazy good trailer from, what was that, Leviathan Warships, that had like that smoothie jazz boatman guy who was just narrating on top of it, and the internet ran with it. I don't think I played the game, sadly, but I remember it, and that's effective marketing. And so find something cool, find a unique story, and just, I don't know, be true to your audience. It's helped for us, but I mean, we're still on the indie side of things. So ask me again in about 6 months, and I'll have a better answer for you.
Okay, cool. Max, did you have something on that? You unmuted your mic.
I've taken my game to a number of events and to a bunch of different meetups. There's always the standard social media, but I'm not super active on that. Maybe if my gifts were more popular, I would be more active. Cart before the horse kind of thing. I don't know. I don't particularly enjoy it. I'm looking forward to maybe doing a Kickstarter, because I think that sort of fits me a little more. Like, have a specific like concrete like target deadline. Like, I'm gonna do this for a month, and I'm gonna try to raise this much money, rather than for me, it just doesn't appeal to like be constantly tweeting and doing social media. I know that like Jeff, who I guess his connection isn't working so well, but he's had a ton of success on social media with his guinea pig parkour animation, and like his game focuses is one of the central hooks for his game is like a really cool hand-drawn animation, and a general aesthetic of like 90s, like, guinea pigs in like 90s get up.
Stretchy, squashy, wacky.
Like, his game is super like juicy and looks good, so it plays very well on social media. My game does pretty well in live settings, because my game is a local multiplayer game, local and online. So when I take it to an event and I have like 4 or 5 people playing the game together, that creates energy. People see 4 people playing, 4 more come. And like, I showed my game at Indiecade, and it was like one of the best nights of my life, because I had like groups of 8, queuing up to play my game, and it was great. Now, it remains to be seen if like it's like super tough getting people to give you their emails, and you don't want to be a jerk about it. So and most of the conventional wisdom online is like, you don't really get a lot of like conversions from live events to sales or to wish lists. So for me, it's like, I'm not sure how great that's actually working, but it's super motivating. And having the like event deadlines is sort of a separate thing, but having event deadlines is also just like keeps you really honest.
Yeah. Yes.
I do not struggle with workaholicism. So yeah. So events have been a big thing for me.
Okay, so events have been a big thing for you. For Jason, it's been more Discord, Facebook pages, the Kickstarter, a lot of cultivating community through there, and like email.
I have a Discord. Oh, I do some streaming too.
You do, yeah, for sure. Anybody else have answers to this question?
You can always
I have a weird one.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe we're like cheating a bit, because like big IP like that kind of like auto draws people.
I mean, nobody's heard of Marvel.
Yeah, right? So there's that. But I think the thing that more so than just like, hey, you come out the gate with that, is that like I've seen indies um like eventually take on IP. Like I think I don't know how to say his name. Mike Bithell, like Bithell Games. Like he eventually got like a John Wick deal, and I was like, that's really cool, right? Like that's I think it was a lot more frowned upon in the past to like get these like kind of like IP deals or whatnot. But I think these days I think it's less so. I don't know. I don't have any hard data on that, but that's
The only thing frowned upon these days is giving up.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah. If you like show stuff and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what's there? Nothing's happening anymore.
That's Tom
But
Brady's about giving up.
yeah.
Fan.
But like that's one like avenue, right? And like I think just like it's hard to like underestimate. Like we've got this very bombastic dude in our company, right? That like people are very drawn to. That actually has like a real impact, right? Like people just like show up because of how charismatic Ben Brode is, right?
People watch the show Ben Brode yell at the camera.
Yeah, and like that's a thing that draws people in. And just like it's hard to understate like how much like that's helpful. But like the other route, if you're not like as bombastic as that, is to bring up the Slay the Spire people again, is like they work with their community so much like over so many years that like they kind of just like build up this inherent like trust and this inherent like connection, I guess. So you don't have to be like that way necessarily, right? That's like another avenue.
Or I like what Jason mentioned was are you guys like, is one of your biggest fears just giving up, and that actually motivates you to work more? I know, like for Jason specifically, he's on a Kickstarter, so he's had people probably bugging him for years, like, "Hey, is this game alive?"
No, not really.
Oh no,
actually,
really?
it's been the yeah.
Really?
Oh man, so sorry, my timer is going off for my roast. It's okay. My fiance is gonna get it. I'm cooking a roast. Anyways, you don't need to know about that. It's irrelevant. It's not. It's tangential.
Are you
anyways,
afraid the roast? Just the fear of the no. Sorry.
Sure. Okay.
This is more fun.
Yeah. Let's derail the topic. Shoot. What was the? Right. The question about stuff.
Yeah.
So, what was the question? I was just thinking about the roast. Now you distracted me.
Giving up motivates you a lot. Your experience with
Kickstarter. So, right. The Kickstarter comments. So about when was it? I think around 2017. I try to push out Kickstarter updates whenever there's anything relevant to share, any new updates. But when we put the project on hold and in cold storage, the updates got slower and slower. And anytime the Kickstarter backers would leave a comment asking like, "Oh, so is this thing still happening?" I'd respond and I'd just be honest with them and tell them what I'm struggling with financially, or how the team is, or that I'm trying to recruit people for stuff. And the backers have been very understanding and very considerate, to the point where I pushed out an update 6 months ago, informing the backers just where things are at. And one of them sent me a message just saying, basically, "Hey Jason, you've put a lot of yourself into this. Like it's okay if you just want to just cancel this and not ship it. We'd understand."
Did they feel
and I was like,
off your shoulder?
I mean, not really, because that's not good enough for me. I get it that at this point there's probably a lot of backers that are not expecting the game to come out, but for me personally, I need to do this. I am stubborn. And there's a character from a show. I'm not sure if you've seen the pirate show Black Sails, but there's a character, Captain Flint, and somebody he was struggling with something about why he has such qualms about making certain decisions. And one of his friends says, "Well, your problem is you care what people think about you." And that's my problem. I care what people think about me. And so I go out of my way to ensure that I not only do right by other people, but do right by myself. And it takes a while to figure that out. And so the backer community has been great and understanding. And it was very unexpected, because you hear about a lot of toxicity on the internet. especially with Kickstarters and unhappy backers. But as long as you're honest and upfront about who you are, what you're trying to do, and what you're going through, I mean, a lot of people have a heart and can understand things. And if they can see that you're really trying your best and that you're trying to make something work, most people are going to understand and cheer you on. And when you finally get to that finish line, it's going to be amazing. Kind of like the movie Rudy, I guess.
Oh, I love that movie. Yes, Max?
Several years ago, while I was appraising homes for insurance, I had a dream. Then in the dream, I woke up and I was just like 40 years older. And that was it. Nothing had happened. Like that was my dream. I guess you could say it was a nightmare. I just like woke up the next day in the same apartment and I was like 50 something years old and I wasn't in pain or I wasn't like old and decrepit, but I was just like I had done nothing for decades. And that I've never forgotten that dream. I don't know if that was like, subconscious. I suspect so. So there has been a fear, but that was before I like quit my job. But I haven't had that dream ever since. So I know I'm doing the right thing now.
I like that. You should tell that to whichever Polygon article they're going to write about.
Okay. Yeah.
That story is. Okay.
It's actually a super interesting subject, like the kind of concept of like fear driving decision making, because like that happens like a lot, especially if you can like identify when people are like making decisions based on fear. in a team setting, anyway, it's really interesting.
Okay, we only have a little bit time left, so I'm going to do one last question for the audience, and we're going to try to make it short and sweet, and then I'm going to let you guys plug your games, and then we're going to go. So, final question from the audience. This is from the Twitch chat by the legendary Imauto. How do you stay motivated through the early exploratory and bricklaying work that comes with game development? This person says, I'm in month 4 of my first ambitious indie project, and I'm starting to worry because our prototype is still very messy and not very impressive. I worry about my team losing motivation and faith as we work through this part. So the question part of it was, how do you stay motivated through the early exploratory bricklaying work that comes with game development? Patrick, we hear from you much. Last question, so we'll start with you. Try to keep it short.
Sure. Okay. So first, I wish you the best of luck. Everyone's project is different. Everyone goes through these hardships, by the way. So you're not alone with all these motivation stresses things. You're not alone. Watching talks has helped me. That's helped me feel not alone about that. Also, the bricklaying work never stops. There's always bricklaying work throughout the whole project, and that's just how games go. So even if things don't go well, I don't know. It's hard to give specific advice about your project, but I don't know. Also, I know we're short on time, but one thing I would like to mention, just in 30 seconds here, one topic we didn't quite get to was shows. Like for me, applying to Indicate and applying to the IGF were very good, not just because I happened to get in, but just because it forced me to get my game to first level point, forced me to get all of this work done. So those hard deadlines are very good for me in my journey personally.
Like the award that you got, but more like that made me do the work, regardless if you won the award or not. It made you do the work, and it made your game get to that point. So
right.
It was at that level of polish.
Deadlines were very helpful for my motivation.
Got it.
Not specific advice for that question, but I just want to say that in general.
Super good. Max?
That's part of the reason I'm interested in doing a Kickstarter. Or you want me to speak to the question in general?
Oh, like off Patrick says. Keep talking.
Yeah, you're not alone. There are times when I just lay on my bed with my dog for hours and can't decide whether or not the game should include a mop or it shouldn't. And I don't know a magic pill. I guess I sort of said this before. For me, it's belief in the game eventually wins through. The hard deadlines is a big deal. Having a community, and also like I reflect on my 7 years not working on a creative project. And it's just like, this is just a million times more meaningful to me.
Being connected to the communities, I highly recommend it. Go to your student game dev club is a huge thing for me. Local indie dev communities, online communities, I couldn't have done without that. Would highly recommend being connected.
You and Max are both part of the OC Indies meetup. So like you guys get a lot of stuff from there, a lot of motivation, deadlines, meet up every month, stuff like that. Find that motivating?
Although I do want to throw this out there.
Okay.
If you go to any indie meetup and you bring your game, they will universally tell you it's incredible, it's great, you should keep working on it, you're the best. And I don't know if he's really that good. Let's be real. I'm super scared that my game isn't gonna make it on the market, and it's it won't do so great. My fallback is I can point to this as evidence I like made a game, and that I'm like somewhat technically competent. My fallback is the portfolio piece. Changing industries.
What I have found, I will say about meetups is often when you're first there, they will try to be really nice and they won't say anything bad to you. But then when you make friends with them, you can get a balloon and be like, okay, so but what do you really think? And then they'll just like, and you're like, thanks.
That is fair. But there's also an issue with showing even at like not your trusted friend group. You know, when you show at Indicate or something, the people there or at whatever event, it's very unlikely and very difficult also to get honest feedback. And also,
cut you off.
whole other discussion. That's good.
Keep it short and sweet. Mike, you're next.
Yes, I'll try. I like to hear the sound of my own voice. So I think intrinsic motivation is really the only thing that lasts. Like that's just it. And like intrinsic motivation comes from like what do you really want to do, and like basically like how abstract are your goals and how abstract are the things that are like igniting that, right? Like if it's so far away for you to ever get, paid, then like it's just going to be hard for you to continue, right? If you get energy from like going to these meetups and stuff like that, then yeah, do more of that if that's providing that intrinsic motivation. And it's okay if it's not too. Like if you just want to just hammer away at your code like by yourself, like basically like doubling down on your intrinsic motivators and making it like not difficult to like get to that place where you're like spending a lot of time doing the things that you really love. Like that's honestly, I think, my best advice there. Like for me personally, like I'm just like a super disciplined person. So, but I recognize that like not everybody's like that. And like when I try to figure out like how best to work with people and keep them motivated, I'm just like, okay, like I'm gonna try to drill down to find what you're really motivated by.
So
and like
go for it.
And I was just gonna say, and sometimes like they don't like doing the thing that they're doing right now. It's like, okay, well, it's a bad fit. Like you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you feel like the challenge is in finding your intrinsic motivators and finding ways to put yourself to elevate those. So
put yourself in a position to be successful, basically. Yeah. And if you need things to get there that you're not good at, you don't like doing, then find help, find other people to do that stuff that are good at it, right? And that's a recipe for success, I think.
And Mike, Jason, we will end with you.
Guilt. Guilt has been my secret sauce. So awesome. Guilt from friends and family loaning me money to help pay for the project and to pay people. Guilt from the backers, not direct guilt from them, but feeling guilty that I haven't done right by them yet. And guilt can take you a long way. It's probably not healthy, but it's effective.
Okay. Would you say it's one of your intrinsic motivators?
Well, I would say it is the looming pendulum that is swinging above me, that keeps the fire lit under me. However, in addition to that, there's 0 point energy is a great concept. Everybody has within them some spark, some fire that keeps them going. And the sooner you can find out what that is, the sooner you can start channeling it and using that as your Iron Man arc reactor, whatever that thing that powers you, that keeps you going. And it's different for everybody. For me, it's some aspirational goal and an idealistic vision that I have for the industry and the games that I make, and who ultimately I want to be, because I'm not done being who I want to be. I mean, I fear the day when I'm completely happy with myself, because that means there's no more challenges, and challenges are the fun part for me of like doing all this stuff. It's just when the challenges get very, very challenging that, I don't know, the panic attacks every other week, that was a fun thing for a few years. But anyways, there's happier endings to all of it, because I feel like I'm more prepared from finding all these intrinsic motivators and things that drive you, and everybody has it. If you don't think you do, don't give up on yourself. Just look deeper within. Everybody has something that pushes them forward, and find a way to amplify that and channel it. Almost like a Sith uses anger to channel their force powers. not a direct positive thing, but it's it is like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to let you know that a 90 guy in the Twitch chat is sending socially distant virtual hugs to you, Jason. So
Thank you.
So all of you have 10 seconds to plug your game. What is it? Where people can get it? Go. We're going to go from top right all the way around. Mike, go.
Oh shit! I'm not the top right of my screen. Okay, we're second dinner. We're making a Marvel mobile game. Hopefully, we don't take too much longer. But look out for us. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Next, Max Clark.
I'm making Flock of Dogs. You can search for it on Steam and wishlist it. You can also go to flockofdogs.com. It is a cooperative game for 1 to 8 players, local and online, where you get to ride a flying dog, sort of inspired by my dog. Airships.
Thank you, Max. Jason.
I'm not going to plug myself. Instead, I'm just going to say, if you're an indie out there and you're struggling, don't give up on yourself. If you have a supportive family, they haven't given up on you either. If they have, then they're a pretty crappy family. But just stick with it. Follow your heart, and just remember that this is a form of creative expression. And the more you show the world what you can do, the happier you'll be. Everybody loves creatively expressing themselves. So stick with it. And if times get tough, find a support group of other indies, because we're all struggling in some way or another. And you can find support with other people suffering, if that makes sense. Anyways, that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you, Jason.
Mhm.
Finally, Patrick.
Yeah, you are not alone. Making games is really hard. Feel free to go to my website and shoot me an email. I'm happy to talk about motivation or games or whatever. You can search Patrick's Parabox on Steam if you would like to wishlist it. And you can also search I Want to Maker on Steam if you want to play.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Oh,
I feel like someone should plug Kick Parkour, though. I feel so bad.
Now I am going to plug Jeff's game.
Yeah.
Jeff is an indie developer working on Guinea Pig Parkour. It is one of the zaniest, wackiest, most funnest looking games I've seen in a long to grace a Facebook page. And I am super looking forward to that coming out. You can follow him on Twitter. You can look up Guinea Pig Parkour. He's a very awesome, chill guy, and I'm looking forward to see what he does in the future. So sorry that we had technical issues.
I know, it sucks that he couldn't join us.
Really wish we had your perspective, but I hope you find peace knowing that people now know where to find you on Twitter. So much love. Thank you all for coming to this indie panel and capping off the Student Games Festival 2020 Day 1. Signing off, we have Mike Schweitzer, Max Clark, Jason Fader, Patrick Traynor, and Jeff Mumm. I'm Peter Doria. See y'all tomorrow. Oh, actually, closing ceremony. I'll see you in just a second. Bye-bye.